Okay. Well, hopefully everyone's day will get better. This has been kind of a rough start, gloomy morning, but so talk about how and why you should contribute to open source. So let me do this. So first, we'll go into what this talk is not because it's kind of important. So this talk is not a talk about, it's not meant to shame anyone that's not contributing. It's more to inform and help encourage contributions. It's not a talk to bash proprietary software of any kind. We're not going over the what Libra versus gratis is, or what free is speech and free is in fear means. If you don't know that, there's plenty of good articles on Wikipedia. Richard Stallman has a lot of good talks and information on that. I would highly recommend doing those. So, who am I? Well, I'm Adam Jimerson, software engineer at Code Journeyman. We're a Drupal agency, but we also do mobile development for Android, iOS, and we also do systems development in Go, which is an open source programming language developed by Google, and it's meant to be C for the 21st century. Um, I am the lead organizer of the Google Developer Group here in Gig City. I'm a FLOSS, a free Libra open source software enthusiast, and as well as a tech enthusiast. I am a developer of PackBSD, which is an open source operating system based off of Arch Linux and FreeBSD, and just an all-around geek. You can email me at vindion at gmail, hit me up on Google Plus, or find my personal website. Um, so most at least one open source software. Some examples of these would be operating systems such as Linux, the Berkeley Software Distribution, or BSD, Minix, or we even use web servers, Apache, Nginx, Lydie, or so on and so forth, or web browsers, Firefox or Chromium, which is the open source version of Google Chrome, and where all the actual development takes place. We also use databases, so MariaDB instead of MySQL, because I'll get into that later if we have time. There's also Postgres and SQLite, and we even just do programming languages. So we do, so you use PHP, or you might know Perl or JavaScript, or C++ or C, Ruby, Python, Go, or you use a framework, Drupal, which is the reason why we're all here, WordPress, Django, or even just using text editors that are open source. So um, there are some disclaimers or some information that can be kind of scary to some people. So some of the larger and older communities, such as the Linux kernel development group, they have members that tend to be a little more blunt and more forward about things, and this can be off-putting to new people. And you probably read about some of the things Linus says to people all the time, and some of the things he says. But don't let that get to you, because those aren't attacks on you as a person. It's more of the code. So he does get a little extreme, but he's attacking the code that you submitted, not you. And don't let that scare you away, because the Linux kernel can also be very welcoming to new people. The youngest person to contribute to the Linux kernel that I know of is actually an 8-year-old girl. She actually wrote a patch and submitted it into the Linux kernel. So just so there's that. And also, don't let your experience with one community affect everything. So if you are in one community that seems a little toxic or you don't like it, just leave that community and find someone else. So why should you contribute? Well, it, so and help improve PHP, or help improve Drupal, or even help improve your web server. It helps you become a better developer by enhancing your skill set. It helps you get a better job, because a lot of companies actually look at contributions you do in open source and actually take that into account when consider hiring you. and you also get a sense of accomplishment when you actually do it, and you also get bragging rights, but that's just for fun because everybody loves rubbing their ego every now and then. So there's a couple there's what's called the Linus law in open source, and things is hard. The Linus law actually covers two different definitions by two different people, meaning two different things. So the first definition is by Eric Raymond in his paper, The Citadel in the Bazaar. His version of the law deals with bugs in open source software, and it states, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow, or more adequately, it's given a large enough beta tester and co-developer base, almost every problem will be characterized quickly and the fix will be obvious to someone. So the more eyes on the code, the easier it is to find and fix problems. And then there's also the Linus Torvalds version of the Linus law, which that deals with more of why developers do what they do. And his law is every motivation that makes a person do something can be classified under three categories: survival, social life, and entertainment. Progress is defined by reaching a higher category. That is, not doing a thing merely for survival, but for social reasons, and then later just because it's fun. So, ways you can contribute. Well, everyone knows you can submit code patches to contribute. You can help write documentation or help improve documentation. You can also do financial donations, help them out. You can report bugs, or you can advocate or even get, I'm too early, but you can advocate for the project. And you can even just take part in the community, be part of message boards or forums or chat rooms, or find a meetup group and help out there. So first we'll go into contributing code. And as Linus Torvalds once said, talk is cheap, show me the code. So contributing code and patches is one of the most involved ways to help contribute, but it involves both time and effort, more out of a lot of the others, but at the same time, it makes the biggest difference and has the most immediate impact to the project. And your payoff is a lot sooner by doing it. It's as soon as your patch gets submitted and you're now a contributor. You also are very close with the community because you're actively working with all the other developers, so it helps them network you basically. So how to get started? Well, some projects will actually have documentation, like a contributing guide, telling basically giving steps on what you need to do to get started to contribute. Um, if the project doesn't have anything like that, then then you can get on forums, mailing list, or IRC. Usually they'll have a special place for development talk, so you can get in there and basically say, hey, I want to help out. Where's the best place for me to get started and how? And they'll usually help you out. So some of them will actually assign you a mentor. So someone who's been part of the project for a while, they'll mentor you, help you get into it. And so by doing that, you can get into it. And then another way you can do it is you can dig through like their issue queue or their to-do list, find a easy task or low-hanging fruit, and start from there and work your way up. Because usually the easy stuff, the more hard to leave till later because they're more worried about the harder problems. And so by you taking the easy things, it makes it easier for them, and it also gives you a good head start. And then most larger projects don't allow contributors to new, uh, but instead you have to submit a patch or pull request to the project, and it must be reviewed by one or more project members before it's accepted. Um, and then once the people have think that you have a feel for the process and for the project, then they will give you what's called a commit bit or commit access, so you can start pushing directly. So you have to get vetted basically. There's a trial period where they help you learn the ropes, and then once they think you got that, they'll set you free.
So
Uh,
I'm sorry, so you can actually say, hey, look, I'm new. Show me how you contribute, or give me something small, and they'll do a test run.
Definitely.
So
It's not really a test run. They won't say we don't want you to contribute anymore. It's more like training. So if they think that you're having problems with it, they may work closer with you to help you out. So it's more of a mentoring than a trial or like an interview or anything like that. You're not going to get turned away. They just realize you need a little bit more help getting started.
I mean, I understand the process of creating patches, pulling the info, and doing it to create patches themselves, but I wasn't sure if what I'm always afraid of is whether or not what I'm creating is the right thing, or even how to find the problem. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons I was asking about PHP Storm is the debug process,
Mm-hmm.
working with debugger, using Eclipse, sometimes catastrophic.
Yeah,
It doesn't work at all. So,
and in cases like that, it's also good to ask the other developers for help. So you can be like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem, but I'm stuck here. And someone more experienced will look at it, and they'll probably instantly be able to point out the problem right away for you and help you out. So don't be afraid to ever ask questions if you get stuck trying to solve something to write a patch, because more people, because it's team effort. So they're not going to leave you out on your own. But the reason why they do this vetting process where you have to go through patches and review processes is just because they want to make sure that you have a feel for the project, make sure that you're not going to accidentally push a patch that introduces major bugs or breaks anything or introduces security holes. They want to make sure that you have a feel for the project. And then some of the other smaller projects you can just contribute directly to. So, so some of the benefits of doing this at work is when you contribute, you get exposure to new languages, new frameworks, or even new tools that you don't use at work, but may come in handy later at work, or may solve a problem that you guys are having now, but haven't found a solution yet. So it helps you out there. It extends your knowledge and skill set in general because you're solving new, different problems. And unless you work in a completely remote environment, um, then it gives you experience with communicating with team members around the world, because they're not all going to be in the same location that you're in. So for Pact BSD, I am the only developer here in the US. One other developer is in France, one is in the UK, and one is in Sweden. So outside of work, you can also get benefits. So you can list that you are a contributor to these projects on your resume or portfolio, which helps you out when they're looking at or thinking about hiring you. And it also, you get credit for making these contributions. So they'll either have like a contributors list or a list of people that helped out with the project. You'll be on there, so you can vet for that. Um, and you just get a sense of accomplishment when the project has a release. And well, it's just fun. So the feeling when your patch gets accepted, well, you can have that, or you can take it a little bit more serious, or even you can go to the extreme. Or in some cases, you just may be in complete shock and awe. And of course, when you're shipping release, you have a totally different experience. can do is contributing documentation. Like contributing code, this is going to be more involved, and but it's a little bit easier, and it desperately is needed. So this is actually a screenshot from the documentation for the GNU Privacy Guard for Windows. This is their novice section. That's pretty intimidating, isn't it? And then other times, it can just leave you confused as to what's going on. And other times, it can be humorous. So this is from the Git manual page about their use of SHA-1 for hashing. And the most interesting bit we'll focus on is the last paragraph. This whole thing is talking about the chances of having a hash collision when making commits, and how low of a chance it is. Basically, you have a 1 in a million billion billion to 1 chance of having a collision. But if we read the last bit, so here's an example to give you an idea of what it would take to get a SHA-1 collision. If all 6.5 million humans on Earth were programming, and every second each one was producing code that was the equivalent of the entire Linux kernel history, 1 million Git objects roughly, and pushing into one enormous repository, it would take 5 years until that repository contained enough objects to have a 50% chance of a single SHA-1 object hash. You have a higher probability of every member of your programming team will be attacked and killed by wolves in unrelated incidents on the same night. So, the reason why documentation goes bad, well, a lot of it is actually written by the developers who have a very in-depth knowledge of the project and program because they're writing it. And so they don't exactly know what needs documented for the average user, or they may do it very sparse because they know how, they don't go into explanations, or they just don't get around to writing it in general because they're busy working on something else. They finished it, they've made the documentation on their to-do list and moved on. So that's some of the reasons why it could go bad. So what are some of the ways you can contribute to improve this? Like contributing code, most larger projects will actually have a documentation team where their main focus is writing documentation. I don't know if in Drupal we have a docs team, but I know like the FreeBSD development actually has a team just for that. Their documentations are amazing for it, and the Arch Linux docs are amazing, even though that's all community driven. Um, so if the project does have such a team, joining it would be in your best interest, because they'll be able to mentor you and help you get started into it and be able to point you in the right directions. Um, if there's not a team, there may be a guide to contributing documentation, which will give you information you need to know, where it needs to go, what format is used. And if you can't find any of this, other people on the forums, mailing list, or whatever. So some of the some of the things that you would want to know, of course, is where you submit or update the docs. What kind of formats used? Is it a wiki? Are you writing in Markdown or some other mark? Need to log in language to be able to, and they may need to give you special permissions to be able to make changes. Very useful ways to actually do this is you can periodically check existing documentation to see if it's still valid. Uninstall everything for the program or operating system or whatever it is, and walk through the guide going step by step and seeing if you can, the end result, it still works. If not, well, something's wrong, something's badly documented, and see if you can't figure that out. Because a lot of times documentation like that just goes wrong. And this is another credit for like communities like Arch Linux, because they have people that do that all of the time. Every time I've had to do a Linux install, I pull up that wiki, and it's different every time because someone's finding issues with it, someone's finding new ways to do something, and they're putting it in that guide. So things to keep in mind. Some projects have very strict style guide of how they want their documentation done. It will be documented, or someone in the project will be able to tell you or help you out. Um, and then some keep it in a wiki or some other online source that requires registration, and others will keep it in like a version control system like Git, where you just need to be able to do push or pull, or at least in patches. So knowing that information is very useful.
All the documentation have to be in wiki form.
It depends on the project. So if they are putting it in a wiki, then yes. Otherwise, no.
Can you reference that's in order to read like a public Google Doc or upload a Word file or something to that effect?
I would avoid work files or anything like that, but
Would it work
if
for
you point to like a Google Docs or something that they can just open up in a browser, that may be okay, but that depends on the project team.
PDF? Is that considered okay?
Yeah, you could, but again, that just is the project team's decision.
The only reason I ask is very Microsoft stuff and glad to put that in, but it sometimes requires something that even Google Docs can't handle, so
Yeah.
manipulate it.
And also the problem with doing PDFs is the whole reason why they would put it in a wiki is they want multiple people to update it,
Oh,
and PDFs are a write once, read many.
that's
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So the next way is financial, or the shut up and take my money aspect. So most of you probably know that Association put together the what's called the Drupal 8 Accelerate Fund, and this was a public fund that people could donate to, and they used this money to help further the Drupal 8 development. They fund sprints or reimburse developers for their time for fixing issues, and ran camps and everything off of it. You can get a list of everything that they funded through their grants there, and to contribute, all you have to do is like join the Drupal Association. You're 15, you're $35 or whatever. Some of that money goes to help the fund. You can also become a partner, or you can email them and ask for other ways to contribute. Um, so out of the Drupal 8 Accelerate Fund, we they raised like $500,000, and out of it they paid out $227,725 in grants for funding sprints and reimbursing programmers. So why should you donate? Well, donations help with hosting costs. So it helps cover hardware. It helps cover for bandwidth or utilities. Because if they put in a location center, they're gonna have to pay for power. They're gonna have to pay for cooling. They'll have to pay for the UPC they plug in, and it also covers the project and repository mirrors if they use those instead of hosting themselves, and it also covers like domains and SSL certificates. Um, it also helps fund sprints and other events that get project members together in the same location, because while working remote is great, sometimes getting multiple people into the same room to fix a problem is better. And so by funding, you can help make that happen. And it also helps encourage further work to the project, because that's going to help them realize that people do like their software. Maybe they should continue it. And it helps some places, they actually, even though they're a nonprofit organization, they actually hire people full time just based off the money that they get donated. So by donating, you also help make sure that people like that stay employed. So a lot of the larger projects here in the U.S., so making a donation could actually be tax deductible. So some big ones is, of course, the Linux Foundation, which they maintain everything related to the Linux kernel. There's also the OpenBSD Foundation. They work separately. There's the Free Software Foundation, which actually covers pretty much anything free software. So anyone writing an open source project can apply for a grant through the FSS, and they get it. And of course, we have the Drupal Association, and there's also ones that cover multiple projects. So the software public interest listed there, they're actually they actually help support 38 different projects, and some of the ones that they support are Arch Linux, Debian, Free Desktop, or X11, or Xorg as people like to call it, FFmpeg, Jenkins, LibreOffice, OpenWRT, the Minjin GW project, PostgreSQL. So they support a lot of big name projects through that, and there's more like them. Well, a lot of them will have like a PayPal or a Stripe account or something like that that you can do like credit cards through, and then some will actually have like a store, like a cafe press or whatever, that sells like coffee cups or mouse pads with the branding on it. And when you buy through them, some of the proceeds go back to the project. Um, and then there's also like some of them will go through like an Amazon affiliation or the Amazon Smile, where whenever you buy something off Amazon using this special URL, some of the money from your purchase goes back to that project. And then another good one, if you like stickers, unixstickers.com. And they actually have stickers for a lot of the projects. And they'll usually do sales where if you buy this set of stickers for like $13, like 20% of that sale goes to that project. So while you're not expected to just throw lots of money at the projects, every bit that you can helps out a lot. So another way you can help is by reporting bugs, because sometimes the unexpected happens. So why am I beating a dead horse? Well, most bugs go unreported. Granted, I have no proof to back this claim up, but I'm just going to put that out there anyways. So why does reporting bugs matter? Well, over the years, open source software has got the reputation of being generally buggier than proprietary software, or just not as well made. And this stems because the fact that developers can't account for every use case or test for every possibility. Your setup may be a little bit different than their setup that they tested for. So by reporting bugs for that, they can be aware of problems and be able to work to resolve them. Um, Maybe you're using a different library, um, or your hardware is different. Say you have an AMD graphics card and they have NVIDIA. So by on existing ones, you help the team understand the issue at large and help lead to a resolution. And by making these reports, you actually help better the project a whole and save someone else the pain that you went through later on. So some things that some guides for help make a decent bug reports, because I'm sure at some point you've seen bug reports like it's broke or it crashes on me or it no work. These kind of bug reports are useless to them and useless to you. So making a good bug report is to include what actually happened, if there's been any error codes or error messages thrown, um, what you were expecting to do, what you expected, or what you did, what you were expecting to have happen, what actually happened, and if you include URLs or screenshots or anything, that's really useful. And then any other information that you can provide, so screenshots, or if the application logs, you include the logs, or if you have a file. So say you're using LibreOffice and you're trying to open up a doc, and every time you do that, it crashes. Well, you can upload that doc so then they can reproduce the issue. Now, of course, you can go through and sanitize, remove all personal information from these things before you submit it, but it just helps them out understand the issue if they can actually reproduce it there. So try to be as descriptive as possible when you are also doing these. So advocating. This is a very, very huge opportunity that a lot of people miss out on. So while you don't have to go this extreme or even go this extreme, if you can do this though, then that's amazing. So what are some ways you can advocate for open source? Well, you can have swag, like stickers, buttons, or anything that you pass out for every day or for at conferences. And well, as you can tell, stickers go over really well. Um, you can also do social marketing, talk about it on podcasts or write blog posts about the project. Um, you can talk to your family, friends, and your employer about open source and how it may help them. And one of the few times where XKCD comic in one of my talks is actually relevant. In short, talk to your kids about Linux before someone else does. Well, you can also give recommendations and, if possible, give them pros and cons of using that open source project over a proprietary one, and so they can make the most informed decision possible. You can organize community events or groups. So if there's not a developer group in your area for your project, you can spin one up, or even do just a hackathon or a sprint for it, or you can give talks or a presentation like this one. So why does this matter? Well, it raises awareness for the project, so it draws more attention to it. And as the Eric Raymond's version of Linus's law, the more eyes on it, the easier it is to fix bugs. Um, it helps people get more involved. So maybe you go to like a bar camp or something and talk about Drupal. Well, someone in the audience may get really interested about this Drupal idea and look at it, and then they start contributing code, and then they become one of the next core maintainers. And that's all because your talk helped them learn about it and helped to get them interested into the project. And it helps improve the community at large, because the more people in the community, the better off the community usually is. So I'm going to give you guys some homework because this is a college. So, of course, the Cathedral and the Bazaar by Eric Raymond. It's just a short essay, but it's a really good read. There's also The Hacker's Ethics and Spirit of the Information Age by Pekka Hinman. And then this is also where the Linus laws were published, because he wrote the prologue, and that's where he wrote the Linus Torvalds version of the Linus law, was in that book. And then, of course, Revolution OS, which is a documentary that's really worth watching. It talks about the start of open source, both in the mentality and as projects. So it starts off talking about how Linux and the BSDs got started, how Apache got started, and how the movement basically got started. It talks about Linus Torvalds' early life, Richard Stallman's early life trying to get things going, and all the huge open source giants. No, the better off you are. So thank you. Are there any questions?